Hi everyone, in this video we will be looking at an out-of-this-world queen sacrifice that those of you who are e4 players can prepare to play in your own games. This queen sacrifice arises largely, but not entirely, out of the mainline moves in the Accelerated Dragon opening. The Accelerated Dragon line I am referring to comes from a game that some of you may have already heard of, the famous Nezhedinov versus Chernikov 1962 game. What most people don't know is that the queen sacrifice in that game arose in more than a half-dozen professional games. Let's take a look at it. e4. The move that Bobby Fischer wrote was best by test. e4 takes control of the center, frees up two white pieces, the queen and the light square bishop. c5 signifies the Sicilian defense and is statistically one of the best ways to respond to e4. Knight f3 develops the knight in preparation for d4, the open Sicilian, and also moves the white king closer to being able to castle. Knight c6 develops the knight and mirrors control over the center that white's f3 knight has. d4. Let me help you understand this move. We know that white, by playing the first move, will have a slight lead in development. We further understand that black's c5 move did not really aid in black's development, at least not in the traditional sense. Sure, it does open up a diagonal for the queen, which could be useful down the line, but it does not develop any piece and does not get black closer to castling. If white has a lead in development, we can take advantage of that lead by opening up the position. Think about it this way. In a close position, you get more time to maneuver and thus perhaps more time to catch up in development. C takes d4. Every other move gives white an advantage of some sort. So this is the only move. Knight takes d4, placing the knight in the center of the board. If we step back and look at this position, we notice that white has greater control of the center, has bishops ready to jump into the action, is one move away from being able to castle. All in all, white has a lot to be happy about. If we were to look for weaknesses, we might say that we are missing one of the central pawns, and we might casually observe that our e4 pawn is not protected, although it is not hard to find a way to protect it. On the other hand, black does still have both of his central pawns. As for weaknesses, we can see that 4 moves have been played, and none of those moves have gotten black closer to castling. So here, black plays g6. This is the Accelerated Dragon line move. It's useful to compare to the regular dragon. And let's take a look at the regular dragon. So e4, c5, knight f3, and here black plays d6. It continues d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, g6. Notice the key difference is the d6 pawn. Black will be looking to play d6 to d5 when the time is right. And that move will often allow black to equalize, meaning black neutralizes white's opening advantage. One idea behind the Accelerated Dragon is to save time by being able to play d5 in one go. So let's go back to our line. So e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, g6. With the g6 move, black obviously wants to place the dark square bishop on the long diagonal. White will play knight c3, developing the knight, protecting the e4 pawn. Bishop g7, developing the bishop to the square where it attacks the d4 knight. Notice that the knight is now attacked twice and defended once, so we have to do something about that. And we play bishop e3, developing the bishop and protecting the d4 knight. Knight f6, black develops the knight and is now able to castle. Bishop c4, attacking the delicate f7 square. Now white is able to castle as well. Black castles. Now, it's useful to go back one move and look at knight takes e4. Because you might be thinking that if we play knight takes e4 here, that after the white knight takes on e4 as well, there is a pawn fork with the move d5. So let's take a look at that. So knight takes e4, knight takes e4, d5. Here, white will play bishop b5, and after d takes e4, knight takes c6, b takes e6, we get to play the king and rook fork with bishop takes c6. White will go on to take the a8 rook and win this game. So this idea does not work here, although it may work in certain position if white keeps the bishop on c4. So let's go back. So black castles, and here white will play bishop b3. Let's try to understand this move. We saw that the pawn fork did not work in the previous position. But what if instead of this bishop b3 move, we had played castle short? Well, it turns out that this allows black to equalize with the same idea we've just seen. So knight takes e4, knight takes e4, d5, forking the bishop and knight. The resulting position is one where material is equal, but white is left with no edge or advantage. Black has simply equalized. So that's why we play that bishop b3 move on move 8. Let's go back to that. So after black castles, we play bishop b3. And here, black plays this knight g4 move. Now before this move, the moves we had seen were mainline moves. This knight move is not the rarest move of all time. Depending on the database you look at, this will be the 3rd through 5th most popular move. I would imagine that some Accelerated Dragon players might try this as a surprise weapon. So here, white will play queen takes g4. This is white's best reply. Now, of course, the d4 knight is being attacked twice and only defended once, and black plays the best move in the position, knight takes d4. When we look at this position, we can see that black has a powerful bishop on the long diagonal. It's a bishop that is a lot better than our dark square bishop on e3. So a wise course of action is to exchange our bishops. We want to exchange our weak pieces for our opponent's strong pieces. To make this exchange happen, we have to secure the h6 square. And we do that by playing queen h4. Black plays queen a5. Black takes control over the 5th rank, which appears to be open. Castle short. White completes his development, brings his king to safety. Bishop f6. Black decides to try and prevent the exchange of the bishops. Little does black know that white wants that bishop no matter what, and here plays the insane queen sacrifice. Queen takes f6. This is not the kind of sacrifice that immediately results in white winning. It will take a bit of work, but if you've seen this position before you played in an actual game, your familiarity with the position and the shock value it will have for your opponent will give you the winning edge. Knight e2. It's easy to understand this move. It's simply a move that forces our c3 knight to a worse square so that we will end up having to spend an extra move getting it back to c3. Knight takes e2 and e takes f6. This is a good moment to step back and look at the big picture. Let's start with the pawns and the pawn structure. We can see that black has weaknesses in his pawn structure. First, black has 3 pawn islands. Remember that pawn islands are pawns that are not separated by files. We can see that black's d7 pawn is isolated and therefore weak. We can also see that black's f pawns are doubled and also therefore weak. As for white, we can see no serious pawn weaknesses and 2 pawn islands. Remember, the less pawn islands you have, the better. Both sides have the same number of pawns, 7. As for material, we can see that black has a queen worth 9 pawns, 2 rooks, each worth 5 pawns, and a bishop worth 3 pawns, for a total of 22. For white, we can see that there are 3 minor pieces, each worth 3 pawns, and 2 rooks, each worth 5 pawns, for a total of 19. In other words, white is down 3 pawns worth of material. Next, let's talk about piece activity. For black, the only piece developed is his queen. The rook on a8 and the bishop on c8 are both undeveloped. Black's f8 rook can come onto the semi-open file in one move with rook e8. White, on the other hand, has active bishops, a knight that is ready to come into the action, and rooks that are ready to jump into the semi-open d file. White plays knight c3 here. This really is the best spot for the knight because it is ready to jump onto d5 outpost. An outpost is a square on the 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th rank, which is protected by a pawn and which cannot be attacked by an opponent's pawn. Since black has no c or e pawns, a knight on d5 will be powerful. Rook e8, black recognizes that rooks belong on open and semi-open files. You might now think that white has to protect the e4 pawn first before putting the knight on the outpost. This is not the case. White plays knight d5. White does not need to protect the pawn because of the fork. So if black takes on e4, white can fork the king and knight by playing knight takes f7 check. Black plays rook e6. There's only a couple of moves which defend the f6 pawn. This is a fine move even if it looks bad on the account of being in the crosshairs of the b3 bishop as soon as the knight moves anywhere. Bishop d4. It's hard not to like this move. Either black will have to put his king on the same diagonal as the dark square bishop, or he'll have to bring his queen to d8. King g7. We now see that our knight and bishops are very active and well placed. It looks like we just need to get our rooks into the action, so white plays rook ad1. Black's bishop is still unable to develop, and black plays d6. Even when the black bishop comes out, it will be on the a4 e8 diagonal, which is not a particularly great diagonal. Rook d3. White plays a rook lift, a maneuver where the rook comes off the back rank past its pawns. we can call any rook that has been lifted a super rook. Bishop d7. This move that does also allow the a8 rook to come into the game soon. Rook f3. White continues to recognize where black's weaknesses lay, and that's the f6 square, where black's weak pawn stands. Bishop b5. Black chooses to counterattack white's rook, but then white also chooses a counterattack with bishop c3. Queen d8, and here white plays the best move. Knight takes f6. Keep in mind that this does open up the attack on the black e6 rook. Here black plays the unusual move bishop e2. It turns out that this move is not so great. White plays the amazing reply, knight takes h7 check. Black is going to play king g8, but let's go ahead and look at what happens when black plays king takes h7. It's actually completely losing after rook takes f7, king g8, bishop takes e6, and taking the f1 rook would speed up the inevitable defeat of black. For example, bishop takes f1. There's multiple ways to checkmate in 3 here. Here's one example. Rook f3, king h7. This is the only move. Rook h3 check. Queen h4, again only move. And white checkmates by playing rook takes h4. Let's go back. So black is going to play king g8. White plays rook h3. This move might be somewhat okay, but there's a much better move here. Instead of rook h3, we can play the brilliant knight f6 check. This is a difficult move to see since black has multiple ways of responding. We'll look at king f8. So king f8, rook h3. If black does nothing, he loses his queen after rook h8 check. If he tries to move the queen out of the way with queen c6 or queen b6, we can check on h8 with our rook, and then after the king moves to e7, we can fork the king and queen and win the queen. So here, black plays rook takes f6, rook h8 check, king e7, rook takes d8, rook takes d8, rook e1, bishop b5, bishop takes f6 check, king takes f6, and rook d1. White has a completely winning position, being up 2 pawns with a better pawn structure as well. So let's go back. So white played rook h3, and black plays rook e5. Black is desperate to stop the combined power of white's dark squared bishop and the h3 rook. This rook move is ultra clever because if white takes the bait and captures that rook with the bishop, white gets into a completely losing position. So let's take a look at that. If bishop takes e5, he takes e5. White is in a position where he is forced to play a crazy move like rook b1, because a move like rook e1 is a waste of time due to queen d2. Black is completely winning here. So we don't want to capture on e5. Instead, white plays f4. White obviously wants to take that rook, but he does not want to give up his bishop. And who could blame him? Bishop takes f1. Probably rook h5 would have been better. Here, white will play knight f6, king f8, takes h5. Regardless of which piece black captures, white will be left with an edge. So let's take a look at an interesting tactic here. If black takes the knight with his bishop, white can play g4. White is going to take the bishop, or if the bishop captures the pawn, white will play rook h8 check and take the queen on d8. So even this better move, rook h5, is not that great. So f4, after f4, bishop takes f1, king takes f1, rook c8. Finally, on move 25, black develops his rook, but it's too late. Bishop d4. Black would be happy to give up that c8 rook for that dark squared bishop, but white does not allow him to do that. Black plays b5. Black does not have too many options here. Knight g5. With this move, any move by the e5 rook will open up the dark square diagonal to the checkmate on h8 by the rook. Rook c7, defending the f7 pawn. However, white plays bishop takes f7 anyway, capturing that pawn. Rook takes f7, and here a very nice rook h8. White is not satisfied just sacrificing his queen, and here sacrifices his rook as well. But here it's easy to see why. Let's take a look. So king takes h8, knight takes f7, taking the rook and forking the king and queen, as we can see here. King h7, knight takes d8, rook takes e4. Black decides to take back some material. White is still up a minor piece worth of material. Knight c6, defending the bishop. Rook takes f4 check. Black takes another pawn. Now white is up 2 pawns worth of material. King e2, and here black resigned. White has a completely winning endgame. If there's enough interest, I will do a separate video on how to win an endgame like this. Thank you for watching. If you like videos like this, please subscribe to my channel.